this video we're going to look at displaying text and also modifying that text, which is actually a lot more complicated than I feel it needed to be. I feel there could have been some built-in ideas for this, but we're going to look at it in terms of having some score, and I'm just going to make the score go up every time we press a key, for example. So to start off with, hopefully you're comfortable with the idea that we have shapes that we can change and modify and move, etc. The benefit of using a shape to draw your text is that you can hide a shape. So you can go graphics window, dot draw, and we can draw bound text. So we could draw a line of text. Unless we clear the whole graphics window, we can't hide that text again or cover it up with something else. So the reason I'm going to say is I'm going to create a new sub, which is going to be create score. I'm not sure this is going to be needed to be in a sub yet, but I'm going to draw it in there anyway, just to organise it for now. And it might be that I pull it into another area later on. So create score, and I'm just going to say shapes. So we're going to use our shapes tool, dot. Now we just want to add some text. Let's hope there's something in here for that. Oh yeah, add text. Add some text as a shape that can be moved, animated or rotated. Brilliant. So we can add text, and I'm going to say the text we'd like to add would be score equals, and then let's just say plus user score. I'm going to create a new variable here, which is stupid. We need to create the variable before we can use it in there. So let's assign a variable, so user score. We'll just set it equal to 0 when the game starts. And now we say shapes.add text score equals, and then whatever the user score is. Now of course the beauty of using concatenation here, using our plus symbol, means that the user score, we can just change what the number is by changing the variable. So maybe we should change this to from create score to draw score. I'm not sure. We'll keep working with this. I might set the user score earlier on in my setup sub. Why will I do that? Because if I decide to draw my score again and redraw the score, what I might find is that I'm resetting the user score to 0 if I've increased it elsewhere, which means that user score is going to be smaller. So let's copy user score equals 0, and I'm just going to put that into my setup sub. Setup's graphics window. Again, I'm worried that this is a little bit too specific when now I'm setting up the user score and I'm setting up the circle size. Well, the circle size could be added to my create circle sub, and I think that makes a lot more sense actually. But what about my user score? I think I am going to leave it in there for now, but I do see a possible difficulty in spotting or finding that later on. So I might want to change the name of my sub, but we'll leave it there for now. So create score, user score. So why don't we change our sub from, rather than create score, we could call, no, let's create the score, that's fine. And as score always equals 0, we'll just try that. Now this shape, of course, like all shapes, will be drawn in the top left corner, and for my purposes I think that'll be okay. Let's just run our game and just see whether anything happens with that. And of course we find nothing has happened. Why is that? Well, we never ran this sub. When do we want to create the score? Well, we'll do it as part of our setup. We'll set up our graphics window, we'll create the circle, and we'll create the score. Might put a little comment in here that this section is just running setup subs. So if we run that again now, hopefully we have a bit of text that just says score equals 0, which is fantastic. So now we can start thinking about a way to increase score. Well, we've got some knowledge about how to use our key presses, so why don't we go on and say if last key pressed equals Q, then we'll do this. Let's say else if the last key equals let's say space. I think that needs to be in capitals if I'm not mistaken. If the last key pressed is the space key, then I'd like to say score, oh no, it's user score we called it, wasn't it? User score equals user score, so whatever it was, plus 1. So by hitting the space bar we increase our score. Let's go and test that out and see if it works. If I hit the space bar, it's odd. It's recognising that key's been pressed, and it recognises, space has got capital S and all the rest lowercase. However, that wasn't the point I was trying to make. Let's just run that one more time. So if we hit spacebar, yep, it recognises that space has been pressed multiple times, but score still doesn't change. Why doesn't it change? Well, we didn't actually tell it to redraw what score was. So actually what I might do is just take this line of code and tell it to draw that in here. So we redraw the user score every time the spacebar is pressed. So we add 1 to the user score and then we redraw what the user score was. We're going to see another problem here, but let's just find out what happens there. So I hit the spacebar. Oh, it's weird, we've got a bit of a block here, and if I keep pressing the spacebar, what you probably can't see particularly clearly is that we're actually drawing the numbers, but we're drawing over the top of the old numbers. So we've got a bit of a problem here, and this is where our code in our last keys press space is going to get a bit long, because what we really want to do is hide the old score and then create this new one. So we want to say, before we add on to our score, we'll say shapes dot hide, and we're going to hide a shape, and we just put the shape name. Here's a problem, we never named our shape. So back to the drawing board. When we created our shape down here, shapes.addText, we need to give this shape a name, much like we did with circle. We said, let's look at the line of code, circ equals shapes.addEllipse, so that shape has a name that we can go and edit it with. So shapes.addText, let's say that this shape is called, again, we don't want to get too confused here, score text I'm going to call it, just to make it clear that this is the actual text. If I called it score, I think it would be very easy to get confused with the user's actual value of the score, whereas this is the shape we're actually storing in a variable. So we stored score text. Now we can say shapes.hideShape score text, which does mean that when we recreate it here, we need to recreate it as the score text again. Very, very confusing, I know. And this is purely because this line of code creates a new shape. In this case, it's creating a new shape with exactly the same name. The reason this works for us is because we hide the old shape, which basically means Small Basic will not use, we just won't display it. But by creating another shape with the same name, it now means any commands we use will happen on the new shape, which is great because the old shape has been hidden, so it effectively no longer exists. So we've got our hidden shape, which we must close our brackets on. We hide the old shape, which said score equals 0. We add 1 to our score, so score now equals 1. And then we create a new shape called score text as well. And we say add the text score equals, and what will now be the value of 1. Let's try this out. So if I hit the spacebar, score of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we've now got a working score system. You can of course change the size of all this text and things using graphics window and I'll let you have a play around with text size and etc. But hopefully this gives you an idea. Now you could argue that this could be its own sub saying increase the score. So how would I maybe refine this? We had our setup score sub, which didn't actually do very much. And it's actually just one line of code. So I'm going to suggest that we set up the score down here. We're now not just running subs, we're actually running a line of code. So I'm just going to say running setups, change my comment to keep it updated. And then rather than create score sub, we could have a, which of course we don't no longer need to call down here because we're just doing the line of code separately. Why don't we have add to score or increase score? I could take the lines of code from in here, cut them, and just of course change here that just we want to run the sub increase score, so that when space is pressed, then we run the increase sub score. Increase score sub, I should say. And that'll do the hide the shape, add one to the score, and then change the text. So let's run that one more time. There's our score, hit the space bar, and of course score goes up when we hit that space bar. We could of course make score go up very easily when the ball hits the side of the screen as well. We've already got our sub that says check edge, and if we do touch the edge, we'll change direction. We could also tell it to increase score now. Because we've got it in a sub, it's really simple just to say, yeah, well, as well as when you change direction, just add one to your score. You've done a good job, you hit the edge. And again, this is the beauty of creating subs and variables that we can refer back to and reuse. And you notice because the ball hit the edge, we increased one to our score. And of course, spacebar still is another way of running that sub.